Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is the extended for the LIBRA reading that's already been posted. So if you haven't watched that, go watch that first and come back to this one. So we're focusing on, for the extended reading, what is an area of growth. But I do want to talk a little bit more about this teachers and the page energies here, which is interesting. Because the thing about teachers is, like, if I were to ask you right now, like, who was your favorite teacher, I'm sure that you would have the answer ready. Like, you would know exactly who was your favorite teacher in sort of all of your experience in schooling. But at the same time, if I were to ask you who is your least favorite teacher, you would be able to pull that answer up right away as well. And so there's always the potential in these sort of relationships where it can turn sour really quickly, or it can be really sort of enlightening and enriching and affirming and validating, right? There's a potential for both. And I feel like for you, Libra, it's wanting to be more of a positive sort of interaction, though I do think that there is a potential for it to be sour if that sort of the framework or the mindset that you go into it with, especially because, like, but because I feel like that's wanting to be shifted. I feel like perhaps there was a moment, especially because it started off with this sort of like rejection, protection kind of energy where perhaps there was like just for me personally, like, as my experience as a teacher, there were a lot of students who just had really negative experiences with teachers in general, especially if they were like a math or a science teacher, right? Like they because of the subject matter, because of the specific context, they were just primed to not have a positive interaction with anyone who taught math or science. That's sort of the example that's coming through. But if the students sort of were open to a new sort of beginning, a new individual who perhaps has a different mindset, who can shift their thinking on a subject or a topic that they find very difficult, right? Like with the sadness card coming out, this subject matter, perhaps what it is that you are learning or what it is that you are teaching may cause pain to that student, not because of you as a person or as a teacher, but because the subject matter is just painful, right? For them or for you or an interaction of all of that, right? So there's all of that that's wanting to be cleared is kind of how it's coming through. But here for an area of growth. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the first card out was pain, but then you have magic, right? And so this is sort of why I was bringing up like the Pluto and Chiron dynamic, where it's like both have such a strong gravitational field that one doesn't revolve around the other, right? Where it's a dynamic where both, it creates a system where two things revolve around each other, right? They're both in movement. And it's also bringing in the message of Chiron, which is talking about the wounded healer, where I feel like for you, Libra, what it is that you're being asked to teach or to learn is, or both, is something about turning this pain into something that's magic, right? Like using your wound, something that's hurt you in the past, and transforming it for another, right? So all this sort of like transmutation energy that's happening here. And but you also have the balance card, because I do feel that it is going to be a balancing kind of energy where I feel like for you, perhaps there's this energy of like, if you were to step into this, it would require a lot of sort of inner balance kind of mentality, because it can sort of pull you back in, right? That energy, that the pain energy can pull you back in, where it's kind of like you're having to, first of all, because especially if you're very, sensitive and you have the ability to sort of feel other people's energies as well, it's kind of like part of how you're going to do this healing is to actually feel their pain, right? There's this element of like, when I was teaching a student or like tutoring them or whatever, it's like, if they were struggling with math, I absolutely understood how they were feeling. It's like, this was the last thing that they wanted to do. But it's kind of like, you can't let that energy be the focus, because if you are feeling too much of their frustration or their pain, then you are also going to be in that energy of like frustration. You don't want to tutor them. You don't want to help them. You don't want to kind of, right? Like that kind of, if there's no sort of boundary or balance in that situation, there's a danger. I don't want to use the word danger. It doesn't, because it's not dangerous. There's a risk of you feeling too much of their pain and not sort of being able to separate yourself from that is kind of how this is feeling. But I feel like because you have this sort of nine of inspiration, is that you have sort of the strength and the ability to separate the energy from the person, or separate your energy from their energy, kind of thing. And you have, okay, so the Prism card, which I love so much, because I'm pretty sure I bought this deck because of this card. It's on the front of the box, right? And it has all of this like beautiful Asian representation, especially with this card as well, that I've not seen in other decks. I think. I feel I can't think of any off the top of my head that have such like beautiful Asian representation. But anyway, that's a side note. But this card is exactly that sort of dynamic that I was just talking about with the pain and the magic, where, because you can see that there's a tear there, right? It's like you have the ability, Libra, or this is an area of growth for you perhaps, is that you have the ability to take sort of pain and put it through this filter, your filter of experience, I want to say, and turn it into light or rainbows, right? Like it's the ability to transmute pain and turn it into something magical and fulfilling and beautiful, right? That's sort of the Prism card today, what that's talking about. Especially with the Empress here as well, because I see this as being sort of revealing something unique about yourself, that's helping sort of this situation. Perhaps it's like nurturing the situation. I see this as being like a creator of worlds. Like you can create something beautiful and magical from something like pain, right? Like you have that ability. And I feel like that's what's wanting to be learned, or something that you can teach. Like, again, I'm not sure that like which position you're in, because it's both. You're learning something about yourself perhaps, but also teaching somebody else about yourself or something that you can do. I don't know. Because you have here the Strength card and the Friction, which I'm seeing as the other person, right? It's like, but also you as well, because I see the Strength card as this card specifically as being sort of receiving a new set of rules or expectations, and it's kind of like having to struggle with that, right? It's like if you're learning a new concept, or if you're learning a new set of rules, like learning how to play a game for the first time, there is sort of that learning period, the learning curve that comes with that sort of new set of expectations. And I feel like that's what is happening in this situation, or that's an area of growth. With it coming out the Friction card, because last time this card came out was talking about that if you can't withstand friction, or like the rub of grit, for example, then you'll never have your mirror polished, right? And I feel like that's sort of the interaction that's wanting to happen between the two of you, or perhaps a group of you, is that this interaction or relationship or whatever is going to cause a little bit of friction, simply because of the subject matter, what it is that you are trying to learn. perhaps caused friction or pain in the past, but that pain is necessary to feel in order for your mirror to be polished, right? You need to have the dust in order to have clarity, is kind of how this is coming through. And I feel like for you, Libra, it's like you're almost being like the center of it, is kind of, because I know that I said it was about teachers is always a reciprocal relationship. For some reason, though, I'm feeling like you are the center of this. Like you're serving as the teacher in this case, and perhaps in the future there will be a time where you are the student in this dynamic, but I feel like for right now you may be in the teacher role. Perhaps you've already done sort of the student part and now it's kind of flipping back to you, because you also have here the Knight of Voices. The Knight of Voices, which I love so much. I always see this as being like an arrival, right? It could be like the arrival of your students or the people who are going to learn from you. But it's crossing a finish line. And I want to say that whoever they are very much like, it's like if you have a student who's willing to learn, even if they're like struggling at first, the willingness is kind of the only thing that you need as a teacher, right? If somebody is willing to learn, they can learn anything. That's kind of what this is talking about. And I feel like that's what they're coming to you with, is a willingness to learn. So you can basically do anything with that, right? Like there's infinite sort of possibilities if someone has an attitude of, I just want to learn, right? That kind of thing, which is really quite beautiful. And then here you have the Awakening and the Four of Inspiration. Because this Four of Inspiration I sort of talk about as being like a community or like a really tight-knit group, but it's almost like a study group. Perhaps there's like this, it's all this like sort of studying or learning energy, which is really wonderful. It's like that, anyways, I'm not going to get into that. Perhaps I should, but maybe not in this reading. With this Awakening card too, because it's highlighting the Empress, right? With this energy coming out of the solar plexus, where it's kind of like you are the spotlight. It's like you're shining a spotlight on the area of growth, is kind of how this is feeling. Like if you, for my experience as a teacher, it's like first you have to identify what the student does not understand, right? Like where it is that they're tripping up, in order for you to actually like put a circle around it and be like, this is the area, this is the thing that you need to work on, or this is the area or concept that we need to clarify, right? And sometimes that may go back really, really far. Like I had students in grade 9 math who couldn't add numbers together, right? So it's like I was trying to teach them grade 9 concepts when they still had difficulties with previous year concepts. So it's like I can't like having to almost go back and look through all of this student's knowledge in order to identify what the problem is kind of what this is talking about. And I feel like that's what you're being asked to do, is like kind of like use a flashlight, right? Use a flashlight and try and find the area of growth that is first needing to be addressed, right? Like you can't teach a student grade 9 math if they don't have grade 8 math, or even further back, grade 4 math, right? That kind of thing. Okay, I'm gonna pause there. But anyways, or just gonna leave that thing there. So the Four of Inspiration I'm seeing as a study group. So I feel like for you as well, even though you're sort of playing the role of teacher in this situation, there's going to be a learning curve for you as well, of like learning how to teach or learning how to organize this study group, when to meet, that kind of thing. That's going to be perhaps your task in learning. Because, but what I see about this is kind of like the classroom, right? It's like the environment. I feel like there's a thing that you do, Libra, that can provide like a calm resistant-free environment is kind of how this is coming through, right? It's like you have to have a place or a location or environment for the students to come that is going to put them at ease, is kind of how it's feeling, right? It's like students not going to come to a math classroom if they have negative feelings about math, right? They're not going to come to extra help if they hate doing any sort of math activity. But it's kind of like I feel like because they're coming with a willingness to learn, that's sort of not the barrier you need to surpass. It's kind of talking about creating an environment, like you being sort of the center of it, holding that position of sort of ease and peace and acceptance, appreciation, that puts these ones at ease, is kind of how it's feeling to me. And then here you have the Muse of inspiration, which always, like, the Muses to me represent a challenge, because I do feel that it's going to be a bit of a challenge for you, Libra, especially because here I want to know, like, I pulled cards. So here you have the 10 of materials and the 9 of materials. So this may be just sort of this is my personal bias. So I think it's always important to know your readers and what their biases are. So for me, I look at this 10 of materials and I see it as being like prioritizing the health of this group think sort of mentality. Prioritizing that actually takes or requires sacrifice or life force from the things that are maintaining that energy, right? So that's my bias. That's how I see this 10 of materials. Whereas this 9 of materials is more of like an independence. You create your own abundance. You don't have to put any of your energy into something that has no actual benefit for you, right? It's like, I would rather work alone than work in a group that drains my energy, is kind of my interpretation of this. And so I feel like that might be a challenge for you, because because these were side by side, right? It's like for you to create this classroom, it's going to require you to give a lot of energy to a situation that at first might not give a lot back, or it may just be draining to you in some way. The whole romantic lifestyle of a teacher is that there's like very little sort of appreciation given, right, by students. Well, sometimes there are. That's the thing. It's like it takes a lot of work on your part as a teacher to sort of give a lot of your energy to another person's well-being, right, or learning or whatever, and there may not be any sort of return on your investment, is kind of how this interaction is playing through today. So I feel like that might be a challenge, where it's kind of like perhaps at first there's not an obvious sort of return on your investment, on your energetic investment in this situation. But actually, for the first time today, I actually looked really close at these people, even though they're sort of in gray. I don't know if you can see it here, but even though they're sort of not colorful, right? It's like they're, at first glance from far away, it kind of appears that they are being drained of their life force, is kind of how I'm reading it. But up close, if you look at their faces, they're all actually turned towards you and smiling, right? It's like kind of like the only reward for a teacher is having a willing student. That's the only sort of reward or expectation that you can have in this situation, is that this one's willing to learn, which is in itself a reward, is kind of how it's feeling. Okay, and then I just pulled a couple more cards because I feel like that wasn't like enough for me personally. But you have here Justice, High Priestess, and then the 5 of Inspiration, which is what I feel like is perhaps why you've been reluctant to engage in this situation before, right? It's the energy of like having your energy or attention split. Sorry, I had to change my camera battery, but I feel like that's an important sort of message that's coming with this card here of like, I feel like there was a reluctance to enter into this situation previously because you knew that somehow it would split your energy or split your focus, split your attention, and perhaps cause a little bit of confusion as well. It's like, because there are perhaps like competing interests, right? It's like there's something that you're wanting to manifest that requires a lot of your focus and energy. And now it's like this opportunity perhaps is coming in where it is something that you want to focus on or achieve or grow or develop in yourself, but perhaps that wasn't a priority, or it's like it's directly competing with some other goal that you may have, right? It's like you want to say yes to this opportunity, but in doing so may cause a splitting of your attention or focus or energy for some other thing that you've been intensely focused on, right? That might be also a challenge as well. It's up to you, Libra, what you want to do, but I feel like for you, if you are to say yes to this, it's kind of like, first of all, recognizing when your battery is low, because I feel like inevitably there will be a situation where the teaching aspect or being involved in sort of this group, the study group, being involved in this group may drain your energy or split your energy, or just by nature of like, it's like something new that you're doing that you haven't tried before. And so it does take a lot of energy and focus and all that. So first of all, recognizing when your battery is low and when you need to pause to sort of recharge your battery, that kind of thing. I feel like that's going to be important as well, because you have here the High Priestess, which is actually first time I'm reading it like this, where it's actually looking like a stop or a pause, right? Like being able to understand your own energy and your own energy capacity, because that differs for everyone, right? It's like, I know some people who can give and give and give and never get tired. I'm not like that. It's like I need a lot of time to myself in order to recharge that kind of ability to give, right? It's like, and I feel like that's sort of what's wanting to be focused for you, is being able to recognize when you're giving too much or when your energy is being split too much, and actually having the ability to step back. But you have here the Justice card in ending your reading, because this is a Libra card, of course, which talks about balance, right? Like Libras are always seeking balance, and because that was in the growth area for you, I feel like this is going to be a really positive sort of experience in learning more about your inner balance and how to maintain that as much as possible. But it's kind of like, in order to learn about inner balance, you kind of have to put yourself off balance a little bit in order to sort of learn how to remain stable, right? It's like, if you're learning how to do yoga, you can only get better at the tree pose, right? Like lifting one leg up, if you practice that, right? So it's kind of like it's coming through with this energy of practice and learning again as well. But for you, it's like what you're learning is how to maintain your inner balance when other people around you are not in that energy, is kind of how it's feeling for you today. But I love this card as well because it talks about when you make a choice to move towards something, all of this sort of new information, new ideas are revealed to you, right? It's like you get the full picture. Sometimes it happens where you get the full picture, but because it's such a big idea or big concept, you can't process it all right away. It kind of unfolds over time, and that's where this wheel energy is coming back, where it's like you're at the start of something really, really, I want to say miraculous, right? Like really just eye-opening in some way, but you're just at the start, and by the end of this cycle, you're gonna have the full picture, and it's gonna be not even anything that you could have imagined before, is kind of how it's coming through. But I'm gonna leave it there, Libra, because it feels like a very interesting start for you. But I'm gonna end with the Moonology cards. So we have here a time for healing, the balsamic moon, which I feel like that was your current energy, right? It's like kind of, I feel like you're stepping out of that though. It's like you've gotten your healing, you understood you got some sort of clarity, and now it's kind of stepping out of that. You have a personal issue reaches resolution, the full moon in Cancer. Your hard work is paying off, the new moon in Capricorn. Just so interesting, these two dynamics, because somebody asked me a couple days ago of like if I was going to continue on doing the sun and the moon readings, which is absolutely something I want to do. But it's bringing in this dynamic of like opposites, right? Like the Cancer and Capricorn are opposite energies. Where it's like one you have the full moon, one you have a new moon. So it's like you're starting something, or you're doing something that you love, perhaps, that you blocked yourself off from before. I don't know, something like that. And then you have here a new start is coming, the new moon. So because we are in the new moon Sagittarius right now, that could be a good thing to keep in mind to sort of work with. Again, if you've never worked with new moon or any sort of moon energies, what I do, what's most comfortable to me, I just like to write down what it is I'm trying to manifest, especially because it's a new moon energy. For full moon, I just write down things that I'm releasing. And then once you get to the full moon in this part, in this cycle, go back to your new moon energies and see how those kind of goals have shifted and what you need to release in order to move those manifestations forward. Okay, I'm going to end it there. That was a lot of talking. So, thanks so much for watching. I do have other videos if you're interested in watching those. Thanks for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.